Hey everyone, welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy, I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. How are you doing in the choir? We're in month 3. Are you staying in? Or are you too tough to stay in? Are you too tough to wear a mask? You too tough? You got big biceps, so viruses can't hurt you? Hey everyone, we all live in a crazy society, don't we? But you know what isn't crazy? Today's episode. Today's episode is great. This was taped before the pandemic. One of the last few I did before lockdown. And what a wonderful time I had with Jimmy Flemion. If you don't know who he is, let me tell you about him. Jimmy and his brother Dennis began playing music together in the late 70s in a number of different groups, eventually forming the band The Frogs in 1980. Since then, the band has vacillated between cult status and mainstream success, championed by such musicians as Billy Corgan, Kurt Cobain, Beck, and Eddie Vedder, and releasing albums on labels like Matador and Scratchy. Though Dennis passed away in 2012, Jimmy continues to write and record music, recently touring, backed by Evan Dando of the Lemonheads. At the beginning of April, the End of All Music released The Frogs' previously unreleased very first studio album, which is entitled First. And it was interesting. I kind of didn't know what to expect from Jimmy. Based on the music, or based on the myth of the Frogs. And then I go to his hotel room. Him and Evan Dando were here playing music. And I went to his hotel in Beverly Hills? I think that's about... I've been here, almost 3 years, and I still don't really know the demarcations for the neighborhoods. Let's say it was Beverly Hills, West Hollywood over there. So I go over there, and he was the nicest, the most humble, very demure. Not what I expected, and I thought we had a very interesting talk about the band's origins, about regret, a lot of other things. That was very cool. And also, it reminds me of when I could leave the house for something other than walking the dog. Maybe it'll remind you of that too. By the way, if this is your first time listening to the show, thanks for checking it out. If you want to check out other episodes, they're all there on Spotify. They are all there at beginnings.libsyn.com. The last 100 should be on whatever app you use. Check them out. Hundreds of musicians and artists and actors and comedians, etc., etc., etc. Also, if you'd like, I'm on social media at Andy Beckerman. And I think that's about it. I got some great talks coming up. Who's on the show? I just talked to Sam Prekop from the Sea and Cake. That's pretty wonderful. So stay tuned for that and a bunch of other great episodes. But for now, let's talk to Jimmy. We're here in West Hollywood in your hotel room.
Room 211, right?
I mean, listeners, this will be coming out later, so don't show up at the standard room 211 and expect Jimmy to be there. But it's interesting. I was driving over here and I was like, oh, this feels like I'm in the 1970s, like interviewing someone for Rolling Stone, going to West Hollywood. Yeah. Because it's strange over here. I moved to Los Angeles a couple years ago, and I live in the east part, which is more suburban. And this feels like this still feels this feels a lot more like, I guess a lot of the management companies are over here. We're like close to Beverly Hills. Yeah, the glitz.
Yeah.
How do you're not from this? Are you? Did you grow up in Milwaukee?
Yes.
I was thinking also too. I'm like, I don't know anything about Milwaukee besides Laverne and Shirley
Right.
was set there, and that's my only knowledge of the city. And I guess Wayne's World, don't they? Isn't that there too?
What was the first thing? First thing? What did you say?
Laverne and Shirley.
Oh, Liberace. Liberace's from West Dallas. That's a suburb. Yeah. And there's it's cheese and beer and what else can I tell you? Summerfest is a big thing there. That's a kind of cool thing. The festival in the summer.
I mean, when you were growing up, what were you doing for fun in Milwaukee? This is what, the 80s?
Yeah, well, I grew up. I was born in '60, so what to do for fun? Me and Dennis, we played pinball. We did that. That was a big thing for us. We'd go out on Friday nights, Saturday nights, and play pinball. That was some fun. Let's see. I mean, where do you want to start with that? I mean, we started out. We were what do you call it? Roller skaters from an early age.
Yeah.
Yeah, we roller skated. There was a roller skate rink right around the house, and we that was the thing that began the competition between everyone. Yeah.
I mean, that was when I was growing up. Roller skating was the thing. I was a kid in the 80s.
Yeah.
And it was what would we do for fun? Roller skating was one, and playing video games. I think that was about. I grew up in the suburbs in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot to do there.
Sure.
It was like Reading. I don't know what it was then, but Reading, Pennsylvania is like 80,000 people, something like that. So I think manufacturing mostly is what the jobs are. And yeah, playing with your friend. Like, we just played outside a lot. I think that was mostly what it was.
Yeah. Baseball, basketball, football.
Yeah.
Tag or it, or,
I mean, what's Milwaukee like? I mean, in the 70s. I'm saying this now, and I just thought as I was saying it, I'm like, what was Reading like in the 80s? Like, I don't really know that much. It was just like me. My entire world was me and my friends and my neighborhood.
Yeah, I played in the neighborhood with friends. That's really it. I played basketball a lot. I played by myself. Practiced a lot. I wanted to be a basketball player before the music
really
came into being and became the focus.
Was there something was there a basketball player that you admired?
Well, the Bucks they won the championship in '71, so that was so around that time, I started playing basketball, and that was the dream because I was tall. Maybe that's either a good thing or however that came into being. I just played all the time, and I listened to Bucks all the time, and I had my Bucks radio, basketball radio, and I had all the Bucks stuff. That was I guess that became my thing. I guess, or one of my things growing up was looking up to people, at the heroes and that kind of thing. And the Bucks became that thing, and then eventually it turned into the rock and roll thing with the heroes, or what you wanted to shoot for, and to possibly attain someday, or to maybe get some of their attributes by emulating them, and eventually find yourself and whoever the hell that is.
Do you remember when that switchover happened?
Yeah, well, it was about May of '76. I was almost 16. We went to a record store, and Dennis had seen me playing air guitar with a broom around in the kitchen, and he thought, maybe you should play guitar. And I never thought, well, I want to play guitar or anything, but there was an acoustic guitar on the wall there, and he just said, why don't you get that? And I believe my dad bought it, and we came home, and that started the game.
What was the, if you can remember the feeling? Because I'm trying to think back. I was, sports, the idea of playing sports, even like from my high school, I'm always been a short kid. And even though I loved basketball and loved playing basketball with my friends, we would play. I was just thinking about this the other day, like after school every day, my friend, Iran would drive us to, get Cokes. We would go to the supermarket, get Coke, and then go play basketball, just go play until it got dark. And, but I'm short, and there's no, I'm an okay I mean, probably now I'm terrible, but like then I was fine, but never like any kind of, it was never a real prospect in my head. Yeah. So, I always had in the back of my head that I kind of wanted to make things in some way, whatever it was. I drew cartoons when I was a kid, and I got a guitar when I was 15, maybe. My parents got me a guitar, and but it never I never had like a dream that then switched over to something else. Was it really like I want to play basketball? Did you play basketball for like your high school? Or was it just something that you're like, oh, I enjoy this?
Well, I enjoyed it, and I played like 8 hours a day. I would play, after school. I'd come out and I'd just keep playing in the alley, and it could be rain, snow, or shine, and it was, if it was 20 below, whatever, I'd have the gloves out there, shooting from the corner, or the long shots. That was my thing, shoot that. Yeah. And I couldn't jam or that, even at this point I can't jam, so I used to shoot 3-pointers before there was such a thing, that kind of thing. And I was good at it. I practiced a lot of from the corner or whatever. Went to the playgrounds, and I joined some kind of league and was. There was some kid that I remember, he had like Converse, like they were purple, and he had gold laces. Yeah. I'd never seen anything like that. He was kind of like a Pete Maravich type. Yeah. And he was a guard, and he looked cool, and he was cute, and he dribbled like crazy or whatever, and so it was that kind of thing. I don't know. And then once I got in a game or something, it was a different thing, because I was, you're good when you're practicing, and then and even later, if you go somewhere like the what's it called, YMCA or something, and you actually, start playing with some of those guys, it's a different level, and then of course the NBA is another level, so I just dropped off after, I got the guitar. But even though, I still played, probably till, I don't know, who knows? You always play once in a while, but, music became the focus,
Yeah. So it was kind of a dream, and then you started playing on teams, and you're like, oh, maybe this is not. Did you have a conscious thought? You're like, oh, maybe I won't be able to do this professionally, or was it more like it just kind of started to fall off as you got into playing music?
Yeah, I think it just fell off once I got into music. Yeah, because that was it took over with the time spent.
Yeah,
and yeah.
So it became like playing music became an obsession.
Yeah. At some point in the beginning, it was slow going, because I took lessons for 4 months and all that. Skip to Malou stuff and and some big rock, Candy Mountain. I learned that kind of stuff, and and it was slow going, and I kept playing and practicing, and you had to work your fingers up, and you get the calluses going, and it didn't come naturally at first, it just, all the years, and, over the years, you keep playing and playing, it becomes, second nature, and, and yeah, but, first, when you're first playing, you got to get acquainted with, how songs go, and, how do you write a song, and you can I played by ear because I can't read music,
Yeah.
It would take me all a year to figure out, okay, that's that note, and that's just not my thing. And I mean, there's plenty of people that don't do that, even like Paul McCartney and Ian Anderson. Ian Anderson being one that's crazy with the kind of stuff he writes, that he can't read music, I mean, all those notes and all that kind of stuff. But, it's never been my thing, But
Well, it's boring. I remember when I learned how to read music, but it was really boring, and I never wanted to. That's not the music. All the music that I wanted to play,
yeah.
There weren't any like charts for it, so I had to listen to it and figure it out anyway.
Yeah.
So I eventually, like after a year or two, I mean, I could probably like very slowly figure out the notes now.
Yeah.
But it was the antithesis of why I wanted to play guitar in the first place. Like it was the one thing in my life. I was like a book nerd.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was the one thing in my life where I was a little bit free.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if there was some, like, I think basketball, I also liked playing basketball also because there were rules obviously, but like you were kind of free a little bit within those
do your
things.
own thing, right?
Yeah. And there's a little bit, there's a little bit of a crossover between those things.
Well, it's a game where you can't, football, you need more than one guy, right?
Yeah.
Baseball the same way, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same thing. I could go out, my parents had a basketball hoop on the driveway. I could go out on my own and just sit there and kind of like lose myself. That was like maybe the first time, just shooting hoops was maybe the first time I like felt in the flow, in the moment, and just kind of like lost all track of time. And I was just like purely present. That might have been the first time. Same thing like playing guitar. Like there's this kind of like feeling of being in the flow and very present. Right. That appealed to me as someone who's I'm curious, are you a person like I'm anxious? I think a lot. I can't get out of my head most of the time, and these are activities that allowed me to do that.
Oh, I was just going to add to that you talk about basketball like that. I think now that I think about it, it's twice full. It's obviously it's a goal, and once again it's a goal. You shoot it, and then you achieve something. Like I did something.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't do that in the other sports, right? You do it on your own, right?
Right.
You're like, well, that at the mission accomplished, right? You did something, achieved something. So that's probably that kind of drive or desire that keeps you going in life. Like you go, I'm gonna do something. I can, but it's all I'm a Leo. Maybe it's an ego thing where I gotta I'm the best, or I'm the greatest. I'll show you, or I'm gonna keep striving until I become something. That kind of thing.
100%. I identify with that.
Yeah.
I'm very much the same way. If I don't have a goal, even a deadline, it's very difficult for me to get things done. If I don't have something I'm working towards that isn't just this kind of like amorphous nothingness, right? If I'm just like, well, I have to write a script, but there's no deadline to write it. I don't know what's going to happen with it. Maybe I'll be able to sell it, maybe not. Who knows if anyone will want it or if it'll even be any good. Then I just kind of like get stuck in my head. I'm like, well, then I guess I just won't start it, or it'll just take me forever to actually start it. But having a goal there, even just like getting better at shooting a free throw or something like that, or getting better at playing a scale, even whatever, a riff, something like that. That is this kind of like personal goal where you actually, you can set what the goal is, and you don't have an outside force setting it for you.
Yeah. I guess the other thing is I have discovered, or I understand that I'm impatient that way, that, I want things, you think, if you think you deserve things, you just think that, you want things not yesterday, but, I'm impatient that way. Well, you just got to, that's how life is, you just got to go through the motions, and, life, life delivers when the time comes, right? But it's a hard pill to swallow, right? You gotta wait your turn, and you just gotta keep going. You just keep plugging away. That's how life is,
I was talking to my friend yesterday.
You gotta keep going forward. You can't give up, because life is life. In order to live, you gotta just keep living, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is what I was talking to my friend about yesterday. We were kind of just like getting into it. We both, He just found a therapist out. He just moved out here too. He just found a therapist out here. I just started going to a therapist out here. And so we had a lot to hash out when we were talking. But this thing of like, you don't get to choose the timing of whatever the thing is. When you're making creative things, like I was saying, like did you ever watch Mr. Show? It was like a sketch show, Bob and David. It was on HBO for about 4 seasons in the late 90s, and it was by anyone's standards not a hit at all. But it was like very influential. It was like the Monty Python of like the 90s, basically, and. But it wasn't a success. Not a lot of people have seen it. Bob Odenkirk has gone on to do other bigger things like Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and most people would know him from that rather than Mr. Show. And I was like, well, I always wanted to make a sketch program, a comedy program like that. My friend was like, well, you don't get to choose the timing of like whatever the thing you're making, the world might not like that at that moment or might not want that at that moment. And there's this kind of impatience where you're like, I'm making things. Why is the world not recognizing these things that are good?
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Or it's people you meet too, right? You don't necessarily plan on meeting people, and sometimes it just falls into place, right? Or somebody shows up when you need them the most, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing that I have a lot of difficulty trying to deal with, which is that like I can't control the timing of anything. And so I'm impatient all the time, and I have to figure out how to do something with that.
Yeah, but that's the Lennon thing with playing those mind games and planting seeds. And you plant a seed, you don't keep looking at the seed like, come on, grow. It takes time for it, right?
Yeah. I mean, did you always have this kind of impatience, or?
Not if that's impatience. It's just you live your life and you think things are gonna work, go a certain way, but they end up going another way. But it's really, when you think back on it, you're in control of it. It's just you just have to you realize your choices and things you should have done and maybe you can still do and all that kind of stuff. But it when you're in it, sometimes you just let things go and you let the world dictate your path, and you got to that's
yeah,
like
I think most of my life,
a laid back Anthony Robbins speech.
No, but I think most of my life I've been like, well, I can't control the world, I can only control myself, and so I kind of I would let the world dictate certain things when I realize like I have a little more control than I think I do. And there's a way where like you can. It's interesting that you're very like Zen about it, because the other direction someone could go would be you could see someone getting very bitter, right? You can go one direction or the other, right? Or that's the spectrum.
Well, I guess maybe I'm now, but you look back, I've been bitter, and that's part of it, that you realize that's you're what good does that do, right? And then you realize what you're bitter about. It's your life. You do what you do, and you are where you are because of, you're no different than anyone else.
I mean, how did you come out? How do you get through that? Like, how did you specifically get through that?
Get there.
You just it was just
how
the process.
How did I get there? I don't know. I'll be 60 in August. So I guess you get there. You don't get there right away, but it takes long. Sometimes it takes a long time.
I mean, what was it like in Milwaukee when you were a kid? Like, what did your parents do for a living?
Well, my parents met in the Navy. They were both in the Navy. So, and actually, my dad, I think he worked on televisions or that kind of thing, fixing that kind of stuff before he went into. He worked at the VA hospital, which is a veterans hospital, and he did what is called process and distribution, PAD. He handed out needles, or he got all this stuff throughout the hospital, that kind of stuff, whatever you needed. My mom worked at Boston store, which was a department store, and she worked in a bunch of departments. She worked in the record department. cameras, luggage, candy, something like that. So, she brought a lot of candy home, and also, she was hip at she always collected records that way, like she was into like show tunes and soundtrack albums, and also like Andy Williams. She had all those kind of singer type records. But she did one year. She for Dennis for Christmas she came home with wrapped some presents for him and with the albums, and these are the albums she chose, and we did pretty good choices for Paul Revere and the Raiders greatest hits, the Byrds greatest hits, Blonde on Blonde, Electric Ladyland, and I don't know if that was it, but that's pretty good,
No, that's
Jefferson Airplane.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
those are solid choices.
Yeah. For her just choosing. And one time, what's his name? Henry Gross came in, the guy who sings Shannon. He came in like, I got my latest record, I don't know, he's trying to break his record at a department store, but he brought it in, and he was actually there in the store trying to sell her on his gift.
So you grew up with music in your life from your parents. They had record like.
Well, it wasn't that. They. Let's see. I told this story before that my dad, I guess his fascination became his aunt used to play the organ or pipe organ at the silent movies, like in the, I don't know what years, the 1920s or something like that. And so he would see her and go to, watch movies, and she'd be playing, and he became fascinated with that. Like, that got in his head, and he loved boogie woogie music, and, and, all that, what do you call it, baby elephant, that, all that kind of stuff. And so eventually he in 67 he bought a Thomas organ, and he brought it home, and I mean he dabbled at it, he was no virtuoso on the thing, it was just something to have in the house. But then in 67 Dennis started playing when he was 12, and he took lessons, and this was that I spoke about this, that there's so many like organists at that time in the 60s like that. There's the Zombies and all the Animals, the Rascals. Everybody was playing the keyboard, the Doors.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what the songs are. Classics 4, all those people, and so that. He would take his lessons, and it was that same kind of thing with the Mary Had a Little Lamb type stuff, and he wanted to advance and play all the and this guy would come in and he'd play time of the season, he'd be doing all the runs, and he'd be showing off, and then he'd say, okay, now it's time for your lesson, and Dennis would want to learn that kind of stuff, and he wasn't ready for that kind of stuff, but that was that kind of thing. That's where it started, so he was 12 when he started playing, and like 14 when he first got in a band. That'd be 69.
So he's really the one that brought you into it.
Yeah, because he's 5 years older, right?
Uh-huh.
So 5 years, 2 months, 2 days. Yeah.
So that was really, you were focused on basketball, and then as that started to fade into.
Yeah, well, it's that kind of thing. He's the older brother, so I was not to tag along, but in that respect, he was playing music already, yeah. And then he said, and he we were all, I'd always be listening to music along with him and that kind of thing. I'd go over to his friend's house and we'd listen to music. His friend had a quadraphonic, setup and play all the whatever, all the, I don't know what do you call it, the heavy underground music of the day, all the cool stuff. And what else? So then, and obviously Dennis had all the records, or had. I remember going out and buying the Birds, the Bees, and the Monkeys.
Yes.
For him, I remember buying that for him. That was at Garash's, like a stereo store. Like they had the album out, and 8 days a week. Certain. I remember all the. And his first record was the Beatles' second album. So that was when he was 9, and that's when he started getting into because the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, all that that's like everybody's story, but that was it for him. So at age 9 and then 12, he started playing the organ. So that'd be 67, and then here flash forward to 76. Then I started playing guitar.
I mean, could you feel I'm just thinking now. I only have access to the generational shift through like watching TV, Mad Men or something like that. Could you see things change in front of you? Like you went from this, like the 1950s, though, like in my mind, this kind of like very conservative culture to the culture of the 60s into the 70s, which was like a lot more free and open, seemingly. Again, this is I access this only through television or maybe a documentary or something like that. Was it, like right now, I guess we're witnessing a generational shift in culture, and it feels terrible. The world we're living in feels, the shift feels awful. And you can kind of feel it in the air a little bit, the anxiety. Could you feel how it was shifting when you were a teenager?
Oh, I don't know. You just live. I didn't really notice anything. I think things seem to go smooth or whatever. Just things changed, and you don't think twice about things. You just live.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing when you go back and you're like, oh, right, I just lived through it. There wasn't you couldn't. It wasn't in your face, I guess. Before there was like social media, before people were online all the time.
Yeah,
and it was like,
people watched TV all the time then, right? Or I watched Batman, and I watched Dark Shadows was my show, and Speed Racer was my show.
Yeah.
I used to run home from school to watch those two shows. I watched the Banana Splits.
Oh yeah. I remember that.
I don't know. Eventually, I watched the Happy Days, all that kind of stuff. But that's the time. That's what you do. It wasn't uncool to watch that. The Fonz was cool at that point. That was a cool thing. That's out of Milwaukee. That's based in Milwaukee, supposedly. So I don't know.
Was your family tight knit? It seems like you're like. Did they support you guys playing music?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did to the extent. My dad cut out all the clippings out of and had all that stuff, which I didn't know that till I received that stuff later or whatever. They went to we played the punk club called the Starship in 1980, and they actually the first time I played was 76. I played a place in Milwaukee called Olympic Lanes. It was a bowling alley, and they had the Gong Show that they had there. It's another show we watched. Anybody watch that? But anyway, they had like their version of the Gong Show where you come up and play, and they had a gong behind the bar, and they hit the gong if you're gonged or whatever. And Dennis suggested I do a Lou Reed medley, so I worked up a 4-song Lou Reed medley. The Rock and Roll, Sweet Jane, Rock and Roll Heart, and one other, whatever it was. And I made it, and he called up my parents, and it was a dark lounge, bowling alley lounge, and then he called on the payphone. They had payphones back there, whatever that is, and he called them. They came down, and I made it through, and I didn't get gong that night, and they saw that. So there was, like a first time on stage. That was like a home run, whatever you want to call it. Was something to, to hang your whatever you want to hang your hat on, and it was, it was a So they saw that, and then they also, when we played the Starship, the punk club that we played after our first shows, we played at UWM in the Union there. We played the folk place, and then we played outside. And after that, we played the punk club, which was the Starship in Milwaukee downtown, and they were there. They sat at the table and watched. I mean, so I guess they were proud that way, like. I don't know. I don't really think nobody was really entertainers, in our family or anything, that kind of thing. So that was a new thing for them to, they were proud that way, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, I never had a pathway to this. I never thought, my mom's a teacher, my dad is he's an accountant now. No one in our family came from any of this stuff, and so it was never a thought that I never even knew that I could do any of this stuff for a living. Right? It was all kind of, I didn't even know
a dream or something.
Yeah. It wasn't even realized as a dream because I didn't think I could do it. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. It was as far-fetched. It was so far in the back of your mind that you didn't put it forefront or think that I'm actually going to do this. You always dreamed about it, but you never thought twice that you might actually actualize it, right? Yeah. Was that the same? Was that similar for you, or was it different playing music in the 80s? Oh, I'd say, well, that's you gotta kind of go back then, because like we. Well, 76. I started playing guitar, but then my brother met this. He was a comedian guy, but he was also a impressionist. So he worked with the guy, and then he said, "Well, I'm playing at the clubs or whatever. Come see me or whatever." And then we used to go to the clubs, and eventually this guy did Bee Gees impressions. So then we would back him up on guitar or piano or both, and fun play these songs with him. Maybe one song a night with him. So I mean, we frequented the comedy clubs that way for like 2 years. So I mean, that's all that became of that. But we got our feet wet on stage. Then that is that the word, that's the phrase. Let's say that is what it is. And then, so, I mean, that was our first foray into the stage, to see what the stage was like, to actually play places. And, then I did some stuff where we would work up an act where we'd do all these, like, I don't know, TV show songs and, whatever I did, like, Black Betty and I Want to Rock and Roll and Party All, whatever the hell it is, by Kiss. And,
yeah.
We did that, and Chiffon. If you think it's butter, but it's not, it's chiffon. Just a bunch of feelings. There was a big song back in the day, and we just did this big medley. And then I went up on stage, and we would go over it in the parking lot before I went on, and Dennis encouraged me, and and gave me the confidence that I could do it, because we did a little practicing before then, we prepared, and then it was that's the first foray into trying to win a crowd over, or not win them over, just see what happens, and it worked, and so that I guess built a little confidence that way, and other things went on from there. We did some, like when we played this UWM, that's University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and we played like some Dylan songs and that kind of thing.
When did you guys start writing your own music? Because I'm trying to think about also, like, we're talking about the late 70s into the 80s. You guys are playing, I guess, like, rock and roll covers around music of the time. And like, what's, you're also like, punk starts happening then, hardcore, like on a national level, you have like what, Huey Lewis and things like that. Talking Heads. I don't know. I'm trying to think of like what the.
I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot to cover there because it's stuff you records you buy, and then it's what shows you see, and what we play on stage, or how that all comes into being. Dennis, if he started playing in '67, he was probably, he started recording his stuff probably in '71. He was writing his own stuff, or he kept recording his stuff till. He was recording all that stuff on his own till '76, or beyond that. But then, we started playing together, and I know there was a song we wrote, but way back then we made it up, called Suntan Jellyman Rabbits and Donuts and Clocks and Spoons, that kind of thing. But and then eventually we. I don't know what gave us the idea, but I had at 76 I got the acoustic, 77 I got an electric guitar, the Univox, and then we eventually when we got the Boss distortion pedal, and things changed. Whatever. So we got a pig nose amp, and I don't know. We started practicing or playing. We started doing all these nursery rhymes and folk songs, and we did them, punk, with English accents, and that was our thing. That we started hitting the clubs in '80, but it probably was a little prior to that, or somewhere around there. We started doing that, And like I said, Dennis been writing all his songs, and I started writing the songs in '77, and actually even a little before then we started just making some stuff up. We would go to this UWM. They had these piano practice rooms, and Dennis would record his stuff there and bring his reel to reel there, and we'd
wait, a whole like.
Yeah, well, the 4-track.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then set it up and record, and then you also do this, record thunderstorms or birds outside and that kind of stuff, and put those on the tracks, and he'd record his own stuff, and he's doing this backwards stuff and all that stuff, and then he got a synthesizer in '76, so he's recording that kind of stuff, and that stuff is solo stuff, and it kind of sounds like maybe a little. Yeah, it's its own style. Some of it has a little Chad Rundgren feel to it.
Yeah.
And anyway, I mean, I don't know where we going with this. And then then we started. Like I said, that was the direction we started with, that punk stuff like that. And
I guess I was just curious about like when, because I'm trying to think about like what's actually happening in music at the time, or like how do you make this progression from like we're playing covers to now we're writing our own songs. They have a sense of humor. We're funny. We're writing.
That whatever that is, that's a long time coming, or that's way in the future, but now it's way in the past. But, well, let's put it this way. And I think it's '76. I was on vacation with my parents, and I was in Arizona, and Dennis calls up on the phone, and he says, have you seen this? He's watching the NBC News or nightly news, whatever they had on at the time. He said they did this. Punk explosion coming out of England, and they were they're doing a piece on that. So he told me that about that, and here I'm playing. I'm gonna just be honest, because that's what I do. I'm playing bumper pool while he's telling me I'm playing bumper pool with a from my mother's Boston store, wearing a shirt. Boss Skag silk degrees, not like one of those, one of those shirts. So and he told me about that, But then it was around that time that we, we're aware of that, and we're still into that. I was. I have to backtrack all the records and what we were actually into, because at that point, Dennis was into, Dylan, whatever Dylan was doing at the time, which is a big period for him with Blood on the Tracks and that kind of stuff, and Joni Mitchell. But he was also into, Patti Smith, which, that's 75. He was on top of that when it first came out, and he saw her in 76, and then for Radio Ethiopia, and, we were around for that kind of stuff. So that's where we were at with that kind of stuff, It was in the, So I saw the Kinks in 76, and then it was still, even Springsteen and Cheap Trick, that stuff was still, borderline cool punk, even though,
So, so your relationship with Dennis, you really looked up to him, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's I guess that's what you do, right? When you're older brother, but we had an older brother too, but he's totally so many years older. It was just, by the time I grew up, he was, by the time I was 4, he would have been moved out of the house already.
Oh, wow.
He's that much older, so it was just me and him, and I don't know whether he enjoyed it at the time, but he did look after me, but in other respects, I'm sure he was kind of maybe pissed off at the prospect because, I've never been in that position, but, I remember one time he was mad at me. This stuff didn't happen often, but, he took the football and it was so like, we were playing football and he was mad at me. He purposely just whipped it at my head or whatever. And he hit one of my ears and they thought what do you call it? Changed one of my ears for life, the look of it. So
like disfigured your ear.
There's a word, yeah.
Because my own relationship with my sister, she's like 3.5 years younger, and I was always she wanted to hang out with me, and I was always annoyed by her, and I just wanted to hang out with my friends, and I never wanted to include her. But it seems like you and your brother, were, besides the football incident, were pretty tight-knit,
Yeah,
he didn't include you. He would,
it was obviously very tight, but then it becomes when, the working relationship, it's fun and, it's but then, then to, achieve some, like, to improve in your craft, there's a lot that goes into your stuff. That keep practicing, keep recording, all the rest of that, and it was a lot of pressure, to I don't know. Yeah, we always felt that you had arrived already, and we just weren't patient with with how things went and how, but a lot of it was our choices and our and how we reacted to things, how we, how we interpreted and how we, felt that we were wronged or whatever, but, it's not necessarily, I know, you dig your own bed, that whatever it is, your grave, whatever you do, and I don't know, things just, just because you set out on one path, things change, and that's how it went, but anyway, there's a lot of pressure on, I don't know, and it's, at times, because it's that thing with like Ray and Dave Davies, all the brother thing, they're so tight, but then there's the other part where it's there, that he would get mad at me because whatever, you're not doing it, he was the ringleader that way, and it had to be, he was. At times it was like Buddy Rich, like he could get to that point, but maybe that's the way he saw it, or that's the way he wanted it to he didn't want to give up control, and he wouldn't give up he wouldn't give up control and say like let this label do the artwork or that because he had the vision, and you don't want to. He don't want shit to go out. I don't know if you say this kind of stuff on there, but
you can say whatever you want.
Yeah, but anyway, he just he had standards that because we'd grown up watching all these groups and seeing what can be done and what things we looked up to, and that's the thing you try and achieve that kind of greatness or whatever that is, that, and so
yeah,
so that's what became. And there's also then there it was a question of you hadn't necessarily made it or whatever, or you want to do it for a living, and then you got day jobs and you keep going year after year, and then you get pissed off because you keep telling yourself, or you're like, I'm so freaking good at what I do, like what do I got to do, and then
Yeah.
and then on top of that, Dennis gets married, and then he's got kids, and you got the then there's you got the day job, and then you got the pressure, like, you got to make money at this or else to do your other job. And then he didn't want to give up the job. He never compromised his art,
Yeah.
And so then the pressure would, then I would get a little the brunt of, of the pressure he was feeling, and it's a long story. There's the people that contacted us and said, let's put out a record of that. When, what do? You either say yes or no. And I guess we said yes to all those kind of things, and all the things that maybe people question, like, what the hell did you do that for? Would you put that 45 out, or and it just so happens that the stuff we put out, I can single it out or whatever, that it wasn't the initial goal to put out this record or that record, or people just said, here's your advance, and it was a paltry advance, but it was whatever, just
But
took it because it was just took it. So, okay, well,
Yeah.
it's something, I guess, and I guess we'll go with it. It wasn't like, when the time came with all these people, like, with the alternative scene where they wanted to sign this person and that person, everybody got all excited. That was years, we'd already paid our dues, and we'd already, and that kind of thing never happened with us, and it became frustrating, and it's still frustrating, because it's, here I stand today, and it's all these years later, and I've been since 76, you talk about 44 years later, and at that point, like anybody, they talk about that, you got my 10,000 hours, and at 44 years, you're either good or you're not, if you're not, it's like, why would you keep going if you thought you were, well, you either believe in yourself or you don't, and it's not an easy road, but it's like life, right? You just got to keep going, and just got to believe in yourself, and just put forth the love, or whatever it is, put the love into your art, and not hope for the best, but that's just, you don't have to hope for anything. That's what you do, because that's who you are, what what life becomes, what it becomes, right?
Yeah, I find this stuff difficult once you start mixing business things in with the art. Like, so my wife and I do a lot of things together. She's a stand-up, and we write things together. We have another podcast together, and when you have different ways that you approach the business aspects of this stuff, that's when I find the relationships of, like, making things together, especially with, like, loved ones, whether it's your sibling or a parent or a spouse or someone like that, right? A significant other. That's where I find that the difficulties come in, or the fractures start to come in, because you both have different ways that you think business should go. You both have different expectations of, it's like one thing to just write a song together,
right,
or it's one thing to, like, write a joke or an act together, right? It's another thing once you start putting it out in the world, and you have different expectations, and those are the things that start to make the relationship fraught.
Well, I guess you're really hitting home with this stuff now, because it's, the thing is, all this time, some things that have been and haven't been taken into account is that, I from the start, I've always financed the band, and Dennis did his part, but, and I've, financed it from the start, so that part gets, a little, not dicey, but, and all along, I've never thought about it, it's just something I did, and he did all the recording, all the other stuff, and it's never ended up like, okay, that, now, I'm even because everything was paid back, and, who knows? I don't think it was ever paid back. There's so much, the investment that goes into the band, So, it becomes, I don't know, and then it becomes, now that Dennis is gone, then it becomes a different thing, with carrying on the legacy and I'm just honoring my brother, and beyond that, it's a tough thing because it's not something you predict or something like okay, I know what's going to happen at this point because you don't discuss it, and it's just you're a band for all these years, you don't ever think something like that would happen, that he would not be here, that kind of thing. And but he discussed that kind of thing, like he was always upfront about it. He was always spiritual that way, that he didn't he didn't think everything was going to last forever. He always talked about that kind of thing, and he always invested in the books and thinking about it and talking about it, and and that's the thing that gets lost, because I think people there's so much involved and so much to talk about, because people think, oh well, they're this funny band, or they have these funny songs. That's part of it, but, or whatever that is. But that was never that was never the goal from the start. That just happened. We just made up those songs on the side, like for a 5-year period. The band's around for 32 and a half years.
Yeah.
So that gets. I don't know, I guess lopsided, or you think that's that fun, and everybody, and it's one, and it's not something you dismiss or anything, like any, like what, like some actor, he's got all these serious roles, and then one time, oh, well, I'm going to do a comedy, and the people like that or whatever, like, okay, but that's not all I do or whatever, that
right.
kind of thing. And the whole thing is, since I started writing these songs my whole life, I've been wanted to be taken serious, and Dennis as well. But at some point when we if know the story behind all this, when we recorded the first album, it was 500 hours in the studio. It took over 2 years. I know all the numbers because I'm good with my memory.
Uh-huh.
Supposedly, it's 2 years, 9 months, and 18 days. 2 times 9 is 18. So that's how long that took from the start of that till it was actually released. So then, in the meantime, we started on the weekends. We would rent a reel to. I would rent the reel to reel and the cello, and and then we'd start. We'd prepare for the studio with playing all our parts and getting that ready. So we'd be prepared when we got in the studio, and then in the meantime we started making up these songs on the side, just having fun. We're just turning on the recorder, and that became the made up stuff. They were just saying, whatever we were saying, and some of it's like, unfiltered, or but at some point it was it's Dennis's. Not his, these words I never used. It was his baby, but he kept, he wanted to keep going in that direction, and it just so happened that we were working on that album, and then it didn't come out till October 21st, 1988. But on September 29th, 1987, we got a call for Gerard Cosley about the Right Natural thing.
Oh yeah.
And so then he said, "Well, I want to put out that record." And I'm saying, "Well," we thought, "Oh, he's talking about the record we're working on in the studio." And it's Dennis had given a tape because our bass player kept. Our live bass player kept begging for a tape, and Dennis was like, "I'm not going to give you a tape," because he, thought, like this, like a private thing, our tapes or whatever. He thought were cool or a special thing. He didn't want to give it out to anybody, and they gave it out to him, and then he gave it out to Steve Albini, his friend, and then Steve Albini sent it to Gerard, and then Gerard said, "Hey, I want to sign you guys." And I thought, oh, we thought, well, okay, what is, once again, it's 7.5 years into the career, it's like, well, okay, I guess so, there's a little advance. It's not like I can give you the number, but
right.
It's just not 7 figures. And so, we went for it, and, it became like a thing, it became our calling card, or people say, "Oh, I know the Frogs," and that's one thing, but it's not everything, And that's the thing. Yeah. And all these years since '77, I've been, writing the songs, and I'm a songwriter. And I guess I don't want it to be lost on the world. I want people to, at this point or whenever in the future, when, because I have 750 songs, that are actually written that, like some things I feel and some things I care about, or some things think about, whatever it is, I'm saying, I've been hurt, I'm in love, whatever the hell it is. So, those are songs that are dear to me, because obviously, as with anything, it's your part of your soul, and it's like, I mean, for good or better or worse, it's who you are. You just, I'm not, you can't get, it's,
yeah.
it's what it is.
I would just say, as a fan, I think I wouldn't call them funny songs. I would say you have a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And that shows up in your music, right? Yeah. It is a part of it, but I wouldn't if I think funny songs, I think like Dr. Demento or something like that.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the difference. At some point, we, those songs were released, and once those songs were released, Dennis was like, well, this is our thing, like everybody's into this. We still have our other stuff, but everybody's into this, so let's, maybe we can make some money off this, or we can, this might be the. So that's how that went, and that's like, then Gerard and we thought there was going to be, from what we were told, like we were going to have a 7-year contract for a 7-record deal with Homestead, and then we found out from some guy at the bar that he said, well, didn't Gerard tell you he left the label? And we never knew. He supposedly sent a letter to us, and we never got no letter. So all that time we were waiting for, okay, we're going to do this follow-up or whatever it is. So, and then, so that's how that story went. I mean, I don't know where you want to, I mean, and then we're on to other things, but then in 96, then Gerard reconnects with us and says, well, I work at Matador now, and I want to, what about, what do we do, like a greatest hits of all that made up stuff? And he said, well, I've got some of my favorites I want to put on here too, or if you want to entertain those. And so we came up with 22 songs, and that became that's, I guess just as well known kind of as the other one, or it's got a lot of quote unquote hits or songs that people recognize, So, then once again, then in the meantime, in 94, we're recording, I don't even know what month it is, January 94, we're recording Star Job. Mm-hmm. So Star Job doesn't come out for another 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. So, and then by the time, once again, Star Job comes out in May of 97, people are like, songs about, whatever the grunge scene. It's not like, that's, that wasn't the goal, that we're going to put it out in 97, you know what I mean? So that's how that's how kind of the stuff goes. And it's all the way through the song, like F Off, that song, and that's a song written from 86, and it finally appears in 2001. You know what I mean? It's and there's all the songs are like that, and there's people like, well, that's how you feel now. It's like maybe
it's almost out of time.
It is the entire career that way. And there's and even now, you can see, our last quote unquote album, but those are all older songs that from 2011 before, or 2012 before Dennis died. The 3 days before he released those songs that were just like all this back burner stuff that were songs that he'd been working on, and making the fleshing them out was his term, by putting back, put more instruments on them, and then they were finally ready to be released. So, and I guess they were kind of like the best of that bunch. So, and in the meantime, we'd still been working on the spiritual album, which was going to be our last album, and that album had been working on for 20 years with that, so. And that one's finally complete. That I've worked on that one, and that's ready for release. But once again, I can tell you when those songs were written.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right.
And then there's there's songs I might have written today that's a current one, but it's not necessarily like that for everybody in their career. I know somebody like Cheap Trick. When they recorded when they got signed, Rick Neal had written their first 5 albums. He had all those songs written, so by the time, I don't know what they were into by the time they got to the very next album after that, but, sometimes it's like that for bands,
right.
like that.
You like you write a song in a moment that's of that moment, but
or
when that song is in the world, you can't control.
Or some bands, like they just record their first album they had 10 songs, and then they're like, okay, I know we got to write some new ones for the new album, and then that's what their story is. But then that's where they're at that point. Like, here's our latest album. And like, we're really rocking these, or we're really feeling them, we're really into them, and crowds into them. And then they move on to the next album, and it keeps going like that,
That's really interesting. Just because, like, I'm just thinking about it now in terms of, like, say, like, my wife's stand-up act, right? She's been working on, she's doing like she wants to do an hour, right? And she's been working on it for a long time. So some of those jokes go back like a couple years, and she's changed as a person in that time, yet she's still, I have these jokes that I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so you're still like, I think it's an interesting thing to be as a performer or as a creative person, to have this thing that's kind of like a snapshot of who you were at a certain point in time. And I think this is more for musicians than probably any other kind of creative career, where like you could be playing songs live from 1987 or whatever now in 2020. Right. And that is a snapshot of you then, but there's still it's a weird temporal thing, because there's still some part of you that's there that you're doing now here. But this is, and also like the public sees it, like you were saying, like songs from 1994 were then released in 1997, and it was like of a certain time, and it's still, and that time is still there. So it's not like it's totally foreign to people, but it's different. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, well, but it's I don't think it's just music, because if you think of something like comedy, you talk about like, I don't it's the same kind of thing. It's Steve Martin. He comes on stage and does, I'm a wild and crazy guy, and you really think he's there right now, and people are like, oh, that's great, that's hilarious, or whatever, it's like, I don't want to say Dice, but he's going to do Hickory Dickory. He's still going to do it, he still does it probably, but
Right. Yeah. That's so interesting. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk. How do you feel? You said this is your first podcast?
Yeah. And of course, it there's so much to cover. It could go on forever, that kind of thing. So, but
is there anything we missed that you think is interesting from your childhood?
Oh, I don't, I guess that's one thing that you talk about therapy. I could probably use it, because I don't remember anything about my childhood. You know what I mean? I've seen some pictures. I remember one thing from is that same thing you went through when when I was in kindergarten. I guess I remember things where I wasn't scolded or whatever, but a girl was walking by my desk, and I put my foot out, and she tripped and fell, and I was told, that kind of thing. Yeah,
I think a lot of my childhood I remember only through seeing pictures of it.
Yeah,
I don't think I have like direct, like if I had to like pull up that memory, I'm like, I don't really know. I can picture the picture in my parents' photo book.
Yeah.
And that's really, I don't know. That's just the way my brain works.
No, I think there's a reason for that, because, I don't know. I guess some people you probably can remember all their childhood memories, and that's a good thing, right? Because there's like all these happy memories and whatever that is, all the, whatever they relate all that stuff to,
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
And we'll see you guys next time.
All right, thanks.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Bye, oh, 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 bye.